I became Catholic about halfway through seminary. I went to Duke Divinity School, and the more I studied the Church Fathers, the more I studied church history, as St. John Henry Newman says, to be deep in history is to cease to be Protestant. And I was already a Methodist minister at that time, serving 2 rural parishes. And I knew I was called to be Catholic, but I also felt such a strong call to my people. And in leaving them was one of the most painful things I ever did, to come into full communion with the Catholic Church. Mind you, this is before the ordinariate started. There wasn't a real possibility of bringing a whole parish and a Methodist parish, So I became Catholic, but knowing and thinking that I would have to lay aside being a pastor. And God gave me a lot of peace about that, about being a layman and raising a family. I did have a deep sense that I needed to devote myself to that vocation. But as some of my friends started, that I went to seminary with, one of my friends in particular, who was an Episcopal priest who became Catholic about 5 years ago, he went through the process of becoming a priest in the ordinariate. And that, along with some circumstances in our lives, just caused me to think, to pray, and that call to the priesthood kind of came back in a very strong way. And I started exploring it with the ordinariate. At the same time, we had lived in Charleston, South Carolina for a few months. We were there for medical reasons for one of our daughters. And the ordinariate community there had just taken us in. And we had joined the ordinariate previously, but had never really lived in an ordinariate community. And after getting back from Charleston, my wife and I both knew we wanted the ordinariate parish for our children. The diocesan parishes are great. They're very rich liturgies, and we lived in a great town with a lot of beautiful liturgies. But what was special about the ordinariate was its evangelical fervor and starting a new parish, this close community life. There's so much goodness there that we really felt called to start. So simultaneous to this kind of reviving of the call of the priesthood and it coming back in a strong way was this desire to start an ordinariate parish and to evangelize and to see what God could do with that. So we started exploring both of those things at the same time. And
because there wasn't a community.
There wasn't a community here. So we started just with a few people, in fact, people that weren't Catholic at the time, praying evensong services in our house, talking to some friends about it that were Catholic, and just kept praying and building community. And then we had our first Mass at St. Barnabas in July 2020, and had it. As the Lord just kept bringing more and more people to build this community.
So we first Mass is in 2020. You said June?
Mm-hmm. No, July, actually.
July, okay. So from that point to where we are now, standing in a transfigured Baptist church, now Catholic church, more than most, you've sacrificed a lot to make this mission parish a thing. How does it feel today to see what we've created and are creating?
Mm-hmm. It feels like exactly where I'm supposed to be, where my family is supposed to be. Like, this is what we're supposed to be doing. It was a hard road to get here. It was not easy, but it was not easy for anybody. But our sacrifices, the priest's sacrifice, or the man who, I was not ordained for most of this journey, that has to lead by example and show that, like, hey, we're all driving long distances to get here. It's not always convenient. It may not be the ideal times of day. For 3 years, we had masses on Saturday nights in a little chapel. Thanks to the graciousness of Immaculate Conception Catholic Church, you have to set up, you have to tear down. Every liturgy is a lot of work. It's not easy. It's hard. But that's part of what God's calling us to.
What do you think? So a lot of people that are part of parishes that are already established don't have to And it's not to say that they don't sacrifice or follow, the
Right.
cross of Christ, but it's in a very distinct way that we do this
Yeah.
in starting a new parish and having this mission. And so what do you think that gives to individual Catholics that are part of our community spiritually?
Well, I think it challenges them. I think that it's challenging for all of us to come into something that's being built. And it's a different way of being Christian, because if you really pour your heart into this, this is not just you come to Mass on Sunday, and even if you come to Mass every Sunday, this is something that requires everybody to think about, what gifts can I bring? The people see a need here, like the wall needs to be painted. Well, I'm going to paint it. Father needs this. I'm going to provide it. And I think it inspires the best of Christian discipleship in people, because at its core, it's apostolic. This is how the early church, granted, we're not being persecuted by the Romans, but we do live in a culture that is persecuting the heart of our faith.
Yeah. What can you say about our uniqueness in the mountains of Western North Carolina?
Mm-hmm.
We've heard from many parishioners so far today that said we have a rich, beautiful liturgy. It's poetic. Mm-hmm. How does that kind of couple or wed with the kind of poetic nature that we have around us?
Poetry is a big part of who we are in the ordinariate, and specifically here at St. Edmund's. We are just about a 5-minute walk. I'm not talking about driving. We can walk to Carl Sandburg National Park, which is one of the most celebrated poets in our country's history. So being next to a national park like that, being in the midst of these mountains where after Mass for much of the year, we might have just impromptu, hey, let's go to this creek, let's go on this hike, let's pack a picnic and go do something outdoors. This liturgy seems like this is its most natural place for it to exist. There's 4 gentle seasons here, and we see the changing of the seasons, but we don't get assaulted by them like perhaps some parts of the country. So we're living in this beautiful, the beauty of creation, and there's something in the English Christian spirituality that is so tied to creation, tied to the seasons. This liturgy is a perfect fit for living that kind of life that is closer to creation and living in gratitude for just the beauty and the abundance of the earth. This is such a fertile place. It's so green in the summer, but yet gets brown in the winter, and just celebrating all those gifts of beauty, because the Mass itself affects all creation. When we pray the office, when we pray the Mass, it is for every human being, but also for all of God's creation. It's helping undo what was done by the fall. It's sanctifying what was tainted.